Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank y'all again, as I always say, for tuning in to South Florida Sunday today, the third Sunday of Black History Month. I am your host, Marian Dozier of TYSmedia.net and CocoWire.net. And we're doing, we're going to do today, as we've been doing on CocoWire, that is, in terms of Black History Month, we're not just looking back decades and decades ago to discuss who made history back then. We're also talking about and with people who are making history today, like our guest. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is Ron Scott, who has traveled the world, including most recently to the communist island of Cuba, telling stories about music, about performers, and about other celebrities. Ron Scott is a longtime award-winning journalist who lives and works in New York City. He writes a weekly column called Jazz Notes for the Black-owned and operated Amsterdam News, one of only about 200 black-owned and operated publications left across the U.S., and his byline has also been seen in the New York Times, Vogue magazine, and the New York Daily News, among others. He's done publicity for feature films and TV specials, working with celebrities like Richard Pryor, Harry Belafonte, and Bill Cosby, and has even worked with hip-hop artists such as Ice-T and Ice Cube. He's lectured at the City University of New York and at my alma mater, Howard University, among other locations, sharing his expertise in music and journalism across the United States. But his love, ladies and gentlemen, he'll tell you, is jazz. Yes, you should see him in the studio. Indeed, that's why he's here, because he attended the International Havana Jazz Festival in Cuba a couple weeks ago and decided to stop by home for a few weeks before he heads back to New York City. Did you say home, Marian Dozier? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Ron Scott is from here, West Palm Beach, where he was born but not raised. And we'll learn more about his departure shortly. Ron Scott, welcome to South Florida Sunday. Yay!
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
And on the radio show. Wow.
So you are from West Palm Beach.
I certainly am. I was born at Pine Ridge, the Negro Hospital.
Wow.
At the time.
Pine Ridge, it's in West Palm Beach, right?
Right.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's gone, yeah. But you didn't grow up here, though. When did you leave?
Actually, my parents moved from West Palm Beach when I was 3 years old.
Oh.
And we went to New York.
Wow. New York City?
New York City. The Big Apple. With the skyscrapers and all of that stuff.
Wow. And ladies and gentlemen, y'all might wonder, well, how in the world did I meet a writer from New York City? I actually met him at the Judge Rogers Community Center in Riviera Beach, which was hosting, I don't know if y'all remember, we had them on. They were hosting a barbecue dinner and community flea market, and we were both there. But Mr. Scott's cousin, Alfred Fields, is the one who runs the center, and he introduced us. So, so you're from here, but you never came back.
No. It's kind of weird. So we moved to New York, to Harlem when I was 3 years old, and my parents used to, the thing is, my parents is from West Palm Beach too.
Yeah.
Right, because they graduated from Roosevelt High School. So my mother primarily used to always bring me back in the summer or whatever. And then when I was around maybe, I guess at least 9 or 10, they started sending me on the train, which at that time it wasn't called Amtrak, it was called the Silver Meter. And they had all of the brothers, the red caps and all of that. My mother used to put me on.
Was it a segregated train?
No, it wasn't segregated.
No. Okay, so it wasn't that long ago. Okay.
And so she would put me on the train, give me some money, and the ride from New York City to West Palm Beach was about 18 hours.
Wow.
And they would give me money. I would go and eat in a dining car,
Yeah.
And you have to definitely distinguish Amtrak from, at the time, what they called the silver meter.
The silver meter.
You know, and as I said, all of the brothers were red caps. They used to wear the red
those
caps.
are the porters.
Right,
And, porters.
So, and all of the brothers worked a lot of the brothers worked in a dining car. So we're talking about serious food here. We aren't talking about chips and a dried up burger and coffee. We're talking straight up. Maybe you had a choice of 3 meals, either chicken, beef, or fish. And we're talking about like steak, baked chicken with rolls and green beans and dessert.
And real knives and spoons and forks and napkins
and the cloth, linen napkins. You know, this was serious.
Wow.
You know, so I go and eat there, you know, and everybody would try to figure out, you know, who's this little black kid just...
And you'd be by yourself.
Yeah, I was by myself with money. You know?
Wow.
And white people like, what's up with him? You know, and I would sit down at the table and
eat your full
with families
meal.
or whoever, and you know, they talk and say, you know, who are you, where are you from, blah blah blah. So this went on until I was around 17. It probably really went on, to be honest, until I actually got interested in girls and wanted to spend my time in New York than
as opposed to here.
Yeah, coming to Florida.
And that's what I was going to ask. I mean, did you like Florida at all when you were coming visit your hometown?
I loved it.
You did?
Yeah, because my father he had 12 siblings. There was 13 of them.
Wow.
And they all were here in West Palm Beach, with the exception of 2. My Uncle Alfred, who was in Atlanta, and Uncle John, who lived in California. But Uncle Fonz and all Scots, they were all here.
Wow.
You know, so... if it wasn't for that, I would have never known any of them. So by me coming here, it gave me an opportunity to meet my family and actually be a part of the family, you know.
Yeah.
And then for 2 months, and then I go back to New York, you know. And like I said, sometimes, like for Christmas, sometimes when I was younger, my parents would drive down and bring me, and I hang out with all my cousins.
But this had to have been really different for you as a black young man living in the fair and free North, as opposed to down here where they had their feet on our neck. That's what they say anyway.
Right, because
it was different.
I think I came up. I was being raised on the end of segregation, but I remember one time going to the supermarket with my grandmother. And,
here.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in New York, New York was basically integrated by that time.
Yeah.
You know, so they still had those 2 water fountains here, the white water fountain, which was like silver, whatever, and they painted the black water fountain brown. So I went to get some water. I must have been around 10.
Wow.
And when I came back, my grandmother said, "Which water fountain did you go to?" I was like, "I think I went to the one that was gray." And she was like, "Oh, okay, but you were really supposed to drink out of the brown one, but don't worry about it."
Just
so I went back. So I went back and I drank from the brown one. Then I went back again and I drank from the gray one. And I told my grandmother, I said, "The water tastes the same." And she said, "You went back to the..." I said, "Yeah, because I couldn't understand why there was 2 different water fountains and the water tastes exactly the same in both of them."
So you didn't get any sense of like discrimination and separation and stuff up there like like down here. I mean, you didn't get a sense of it ever.
I got it, but it wasn't blatant. So I didn't, and because I was a little kid, I'll tell you what happened though. I was coming here when Emmett Till was murdered. That horrendous
That was
murder.
in, I think, 1955 or something like that. Yeah.
And because I was the only child, probably, I was like an avid reader. Yeah. And my parents used to subscribe, like probably every other black person in America, subscribed to Jet magazine. Because Jet was the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, if it wasn't in Jet, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
You know. So, and I read that and I saw that and it was like, That's like freaked me out, right? I'm like, so I told my mother, I said, yo, I'm not going to Florida anymore. And she says, why? And I said, because, I showed her. I said, you see what happened? And she was like, you don't have to worry about that. That's not going to happen. I'm like,
oh,
no. So my father spoke to me, and they kept talking. And I was like, so eventually, but that was like, that weighed very heavy on me.
Yeah. I bet, because you would have been about the same age as him.
Right.
Just about very similar.
Right. I think he was about maybe 3 or 4 years older than me. Because he was 13.
It's so interesting, the differences in what life was like then and what it's like now, I'm sure. But now, so when did you get your interest in writing, Mr. Scott? Do you remember that from this time in your life, or did that come later? When did you get that pen and pencil?
This sounds weird, but like I said, I was the only child, and I was very shy.
Yeah.
So I was into, like, people out there don't laugh at this. I was into like writing notes to my mother. Like if I wanted to go outside, I would like write, "Can I go outside?" and put a box, yes and no. And she would like, "Go outside, boy. Leave me alone."
Why you ain't just ask me?
Yeah. And
but those are your first memories.
Those were my first. Those were my first bylines to myself. And then when I was in high school.
In New York,
right?
And what city were y'all? Y'all were living in New York City at the time,
right? We were in New York City. We when we first moved there, we moved to Harlem because my father's sister had came some years before him, and she lived in Harlem. So we actually got an apartment in the building that she lived in on 135th Street.
Wow.
And 8th Avenue, which is so odd because now, years later, I live on 135th and Lenox Avenue, which is 2 blocks away from where we started out when I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
So that's like baffling. So I started writing little silly poems, and I actually tried to get them in my high school publication, which was called The Bridge, and they didn't accept them. I was kind of hurt. Because they were, I don't...
What did they say?
I don't remember. It was almost like a haiku. It was like maybe 10 words max. Something about high school, graduation, yay, whatever. And so then I really didn't think about it anymore. But
were your teachers saying, young man, you're a really good writer?
No, they never told me that. As a matter of fact, it was my mother who... She didn't get me interested in writing, but it was her insistence of always writing correct and using proper English that I probably started writing well. Because she was always like, she would check my homework, right? Yeah. So if my homework wasn't correct, or if it was written, as she said, you're just scribbling, you're not paying attention, she would just rip it up and throw it in the garbage. And I would have to write all over again. And so I give her being persistent to make me be aware of what I was writing. If it wasn't for her, Vivian Scott, West Palm Beach. She was in the Chalmettes, too.
Wow. And, they're going to be having their annual convention here in June.
Oh, wow.
Actually, yeah. I just learned that they, they were created here.
That's right. Yeah. Frankie Drayton.
Yeah. And Judge, we mentioned Judge Edward Rogers a couple minutes ago. His wife was one of the co-founders, too, I learned.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. I didn't know that. Yeah. So was your mother also trying to teach you about math and stuff, too? Or what was the interest in, why was she so focused on... words and grammar and spelling and punctuation?
I think that's because writing was so important. you couldn't do anything without writing, and we're talking eons ago before smartphones and computers,
yes.
So it was all about the pen, the pencil, and the paper, and so that probably, so I got better because of her, but I really wasn't into wanting to be a writer,
When did that happen? When did you decide that you wanted to be a writer?
Okay, so in college, right?
Yeah,
we're talking about Black Power.
Yes,
I used to write a lot of revolutionary poems or essays and stuff that. Oftentimes, we used to have these meetings late at night. Everybody here on a big afro. We were talking about power to the people.
On.
And people would sometimes read what I wrote.
Yeah.
I was like,
wow, okay. Man, this is good.
And I still. So then I started writing like more poems and stuff, but not really showing it to anyone. Just write it to make me feel better or to release some tension or whatever. And so it probably wasn't until maybe when I got in grad school.
Really?
Yeah.
So what career were you having before, like after you graduated from FAMU, by the way, ladies and gentlemen? But when you graduated, did you get a job and work, or you went straight into grad school? Or?
No, first I was majoring in sociology and psychology. So the whole concept of writing, I never, it hadn't dawned on me. Because my father's best friend was a social worker. So that's where I got the social work thing from. But when I got to A&M, my freshman roommate, Norman Brooks from D.C., he was majoring in journalism. But I couldn't see it, because I couldn't see. I could see my father's friend as a social worker. I knew what he did,
but you didn't know any writers.
I didn't know anybody that was a professional writer or journalist, and I didn't see where the job was.
Right.
So I just kind of stuck with that, doing the poetry, and it wasn't until I got into grad school, not at Florida State where I originally went, but when I got into grad school at NYU. Because they had the bulletin board with all of the part-time jobs. And I was like, wow, I could use a part-time job.
Yeah.
And me always being lazy, I wasn't looking for anything where there was labor involved.
And so you saw a writing position?
I saw a writing position. Not only was it a writing position, but it was with a black magazine that did music.
Wow. And that's how it started.
And that's how the whole music thing started. And it was ironic.
But had you been interested in music, sort of independent of this? I mean, were you like, the king of music?
Okay. Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. My mom, once again, when we lived on 135th and 8th Avenue, anyone that's ever been to New York, they know that it's right near 125th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And on 125th Street is the world famous Apollo Theater, where everybody on the planet, black folks, perform. Now white folks want to perform there, but that's cool.
Yeah, now they want to take it over too. I read not too long ago. They're taking over Harlem.
So when before I went to school, before I was school age, my mother used to, and at the time, the Apollo did 6 shows a day.
Wow.
6 shows a day. They opened at 10 a.m. in the morning, and the last show was at 9 p.m., right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes during the day, my mother would go shopping or whatever, and then she would take me to the Apollo. So that's where I was introduced to live jazz bands. I saw Count Basie there, Ella Fitzgerald, Arthur Prysock, Pedleg Bates. And these are all people that if you aren't into jazz, you're like, damn, that guy is old as sand.
But you were interested from the beginning.
But so it sparked me, that big band sound.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because I didn't feel that again until I went to A&M and heard that Marching 100. And it was the same spark of the big band. I was like, whoa.
Love it.
Yeah. And then, so I always listened to I was into lyrics.
Yeah. That's the writer in you. Yeah,
so back in the day, all of those love songs that Smokey Robinson and who else?
Fill in the blank, yeah.
Aretha Franklin, Mary Wells, Marvin Gaye. I used to play the record over and over again, just listening to the lyrics, So, writing notes to girls that guys don't do anymore. I guess you text them.
No, they send them a text now.
Right. So no, back then you write the note, you listen to some of Marvin Gaye's stuff, or Jerry Butler For Your Precious Love, and you write down some of them notes and slip it to the girls. Ooh. Wow.
So did you start writing before you were doing this publicity and promotions and all that stuff? Did the writing lead to that, or was it the other way around?
It all kind of fed itself because you know what? I didn't plan any of this. I'm here by the stroke of luck and God. I didn't plan it. I wasn't thinking about being a writer. It was just the steps that led me to where I am today. A close friend of mine, Laverne Perry, who worked at Epic Records, and this was back when they had the Black Music Department. So she worked in Black Music Department. Epic Records at the time had Sly and the Family Stone, the OJs, Teddy Pendergrass, all of those people. So when I got the job writing for part-time for that Black publication, I had her and the connection with Epic Records to get the music or to actually get an interview with the OJs and all of those people.
Wow.
The Isley Brothers. So and it went from there. So
now, since you were mentioning those well-known names, there's another well-known name that I saw in your bio that you worked with, and that is Bill Cosby. And, as you know, despite his, family-based persona and his clean reputation over the years, he was recently convicted for sexual assault.
And he's in prison.
Yes. And so I just wondered, what are your thoughts about that from the guy that I don't know how much you worked with him, but I'm sure you thought about when you worked with him, when you saw them handcuffing him and putting him, in the police car. But did you have any thoughts about him? Just curious. Is it believable? I guess from the guy that you.
I'm torn, and it doesn't so much have anything to do with my working with him.
Yeah.
It's number one, I find it very odd. Well, not really. That Cosby's the only man that has gone to prison.
Okay.
For harassing women. The only man of all of the people that have been accused and everything. He's the only person that was actually convicted and is now spending time in jail. And it doesn't seem like anyone else is going to go anywhere near jail. And that whole conversation about all of those men.
Yep.
Is kind of like falling by the wayside, and they deserve to go to jail, or at least go to court.
I mean, Harvey Weinstein, he's the one that started the whole, Me Too movement. He hasn't even been charged with the
Actually,
crime.
because the last
unbelievable.
the last time they discussed him on television, they were talking about maybe dropping one of the cases.
They did drop one of the cases, in New York. So and I understand how you feel on that, and I agree. Especially, I saw there was an article in the New York Times the other day about an update on what's happening with him, and I'm just like, this guy is legally blind. He's almost, I think he's in his 80s. Really?
And the thing about it, they wouldn't even let him out on appeal, and that's the thing, because most cats, even if they murdered somebody, sometimes you could get an appeal, but he couldn't get an appeal or anything just based on what you're saying about the health. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I don't want to disrespect or not honor what those women said. Only they know if it happened.
Really happened, right.
And my only point is, I came up in that era. Everybody was doing drugs. Women had drugs to give to guys. So that whole thing about, well, he was putting something in my drink, I was like, he didn't have to do that. So if he did, that means he was really sick. And he really had a problem, because, like I said, back then, drugs, especially in New York and California, everybody was doing drugs. So for me to be a celebrity and want to put something in your drink, if he did that, he's crazy and he deserves that. Right. But that's a whole nother issue.
So of all of the really interesting, well-known people that you've met, that you've known, that you've worked with, who was the most interesting to you?
Oh, wow.
Anybody? Now, I know it wasn't Bill
Probably
Cosby.
Minister Farrakhan.
Really?
And I did
not expect to hear you say Farrakhan.
And Ahmed Kafra from South Africa, who spent 27 years in prison with Mandela.
What was so interesting about Farrakhan?
Well, let me just give you the background. when I had the opportunity to speak to him, I was a member of the New York Association of Black Journalists, and every month we used to have guest speakers. Mm-hmm. It took us around 2 or 3 months to get Minister Farrakhan to come to speak to us, and we had it in this black-owned club named Leviticus that was in Midtown Manhattan on 33rd Street. The police, there was at least 8 police cars on the block.
Because he was coming.
Right. 8 police cars on the block. Policemen standing in front of the club at both entrances, and policemen inside. And so he was upstairs. And because I helped get him there, I was assigned to sit upstairs with him until he was ready to come down and have the discussion with the journalists. And we just started talking. And one of the things he said to me, he was like, this was never my idea. It was like, I didn't sign up for this. He wasn't even
leading
sure.
the Nation of Islam?
Right.
Interesting.
That it was something else. It wasn't planned.
Right.
It just happened.
Right.
Because if you recall, Minister Farrakhan was actually a calypso singer from the beginning, and he also took violin lessons.
He still plays.
Right. So and he said,
different.
This whole thing, it's like, it kind of took him by surprise, but it is what it is, and American society is racist. So anything that I say, I'm committed to it now. And he said once he was in it, he was committed to it.
And still is today. Yeah.
So
interesting.
That whole conversation we had, because it wasn't any anger, I hate white people. It was like, a regular conversation that two brothers, two black men would have with each other, and it was about respect, compassion, and understanding. Okay. It wasn't about kill anybody.
Now we only got about a couple of minutes left, but do you what's coming up next? What are you getting ready to do when you leave home?
I'm actually, unfortunately, I don't want to go, but I'm leaving West Palm next week to go back to New York because I'm covering the Cape Town Jazz Festival in Cape Town, South Africa, March 29th and 30th.
Wow.
So I'm going to go back home and just get everything together and catch up on some more writing. And then I'm going to cover that for 2 days and then stay there for another 2 or 3 weeks because I'm still doing research on South African music and our ancestors.
But this is for a jazz concert that you're going.
Right, yeah, this is a 2-day festival, continue. Yeah. And then after that, I continue to do my research on South African music and how it relates to American music and Cuban music. So I'm doing independent research in Cuba on their music.
Because you were just there.
Right, because that's African rooted. And then I'm doing music. I'm doing research in South Africa on South African music because it's all one. The Black diaspora. It's all when we talk about Cuban music, R&B, gospel, blah blah blah. It's all black music that comes from Africa.
And that's what this Irish guy told me a long time ago. He said the only thing that makes Hispanic people interesting is what they got from you guys. Our music, our
and
style,
what we got from them.
Yeah. So now, as you look back over your really rich career, Mr. Scott, is there anything left that you want to accomplish? Is there anything left on your bucket list?
I'm still working on this book, and when I'm here, that's what I do.
Oh.
Because this is the only place where I go where I don't have all of those complications and call in and I got to go to the club tonight, and so when I'm here, I get a lot done on the book.
Well, and it's interesting though when you're here, you're busy too because I just met you 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you went to the Norton Museum reopening.
Right.
You went to some big jazz thing in Delray Beach that I didn't even know
to
about.
the Arts Garage,
and
I saw Dr. Lonnie Smith. Next week, I have lunch before I leave, I have lunch with Lou Donaldson, one of the top alto saxophonists in jazz.
Wow.
So
you probably don't even have a bucket list because you're just doing it now.
I'm trying to cover everything,
Wow.
The bucket list is what happens.
Yes. Well, Ron Scott, I wish I had more time to talk to you because I can tell you have many more stories to tell.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of West Palm Beach stories I could tell and about life in West Palm and how exuberant that whole black community was when I was growing up.
And how it has changed. And we were even talking about that earlier. About
it's horrendous what has happened. Wow.
Yeah. So, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Have me back.
Sunday. I will, because I do want to talk to you. I didn't realize that you had so much memory of this period, of this area.
I'm old, but I still have my memory. Thank you very much.
So it's things that I did not know that you knew. So definitely we're going to have you back whenever you come back to town, whenever you come back home.
All right. I'll be here in May because my cousin is graduating from high school.
Your cousin?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Rebecca Scott.
Oh, and so all the Scotts. Anybody? And then, you know what? If people want to get in touch with you, even if they want to get in touch with you with the Amsterdam News, give us your email address or your telephone number.
Oh, my email address is rscott, the number 4, the letter F as in Frank, at AOL.com.
And what does the F stand for? Florida? No, I'm just kidding. No.
It could.
Oh.
I lived in the apartment 4F when I did
that. Got it. And, I forgot to mention, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Scott has written a piece for Cocoa Wire, and we'll have it in there probably on, what's today? Sunday? Probably tomorrow, Monday. But he wrote a really neat feature story about a local African restaurant. Queen of Sheba. So y'all look out for that on CocoWire.net, CocoWire.net, if you want to read some of Ron Scott's work. Thank y'all for tuning in. Mayor Masters, as I've said before, will be back sometime next month. I am Marian Dozier of TYSmedia.net, and I thank you. Have a good Sunday.